Hey there, everybody. It is Mrs. Dumas, and today we're going to talk about the Mughal Empire, the other gunpowder nation from 1450 to 1750. Now, as we get started today, what you're going to take notes on are based on the learning objectives that we gave you with the Ottoman Empire. So if you need to pause the video right now, go find those learning objectives. That is totally fine. As well, the information that I want you to take notes on is underlined in the PowerPoint. You're welcome. So let's get started. So the Mughal Empire was created by Babur, which you can see in the left-hand corner, and he originated or started his conquest from the city of Kabul, which is in Afghanistan. So if you look in the upper left-hand portion of the map, you'll see where Kabul is. And from Kabul, he invades India. One of his biggest accomplishments was capturing Delhi. And then, as you can see, up from the 1500s to 1707, the Mughals conquered most of India, which is really quite impressive. Because you should know from your previous knowledge on India that India is very geographically diverse and culturally diverse, and it is pretty hard to conquer the entire subcontinent. So what made the Mughals able to do this? You guessed it, gunpowder. Just like the Ottomans, they used gunpowder in cannons, they used gunpowder in muskets, and when your enemies don't have those same type of weapons, it's going to make victory pretty easy, which, relatively speaking, it was. Way to go, Babur. Way to go. However, Babur is not the most famous of all Mughal empires. That title goes to Akbar. He is Babur's son, and he does continue the expansion of the Mughal Empire until most of India was under Mughal control. But he has a little bit of an issue. You see, India traditionally has been very hard to govern because of its diversity. Geographically, it's got the Ghats Mountains on both coastlines. It's got the Deccan Plateau, like right in the middle of the subcontinent. It's got the Thar Desert. You've got the Himalayas. Like, there's all kinds of issues, and it's really created segments of India that each kind of developed their own customs, their own religious beliefs, their own kind of jam. And so when Akbar comes to power, he has to figure out a way to govern these people as effectively as possible. So what does he decide? Well, it goes something like this. He knows that there is a lot of diversity. He knows that India traditionally has not been a unified subcontinent. So he kind of wants to loosely tie these provinces together. He is still going to be the absolute all-powerful single leader, just like we see in the Ottoman Empire. But what he decides to do is give these provinces a pretty good degree of autonomy, right? So as the top government official, he's going to have a council of ministers, kind of similar to the Diwan in the Ottoman Empire, basically your cabinet. And then he's going to assign leaders for each of the provinces that you see on the map. And then you might also see local leaders within specific areas of the provinces. And each province was given a lot of autonomy or a lot of freedom to deal with and decide any issues that dealt only with their province. So if anything was about only their specific province, then that was entirely based on the provincial leaders. If it involved 2 or 3 provinces, then it's going to be based on a regional leader. If it's based on all the provinces as a national issue, then Akbar certainly is going to have to make that decision with the help of his council of ministers. And this system works pretty well for India. Not only does the government make sure they still are in absolute control, but the provinces feel respected, they feel valued, timely decisions can be made on provincial issues, and so this system is pretty good. Can you find the similarities between this system and the Ottomans? So why don't you pause the video right now, take a couple minutes, and find those similarities between Ottoman and Mughal government. And when you're done, come back. So you're back. Did you find any similarities? I bet you did. I think some of the big similarities we see is that in both systems, the leader is absolute. I think another similarity is that in both systems, you have provincial leaders who are given a degree of autonomy to deal with their own issues within their province. And that really is to control the people to make sure there's as least amount of rebellion and hopefully no revolution. So hopefully you guys were able to see that. And if you found more similarities, that's awesome. So why is Akbar probably the most well-known leader of the Mughal Empire? Well, it's because he's just cool. He really, really is. He was able to see beyond his own power. If you look on the screen, you can see the three things that he wanted to achieve during his lifetime. And when you look at those, you see a man who truly wants to do what's best for his people and what's best for the empire. And that's pretty impressive because very few leaders back then or even today truly care about the people. Most leaders care about power. And I think that's something you can see even in our government today in the United States, whether it's representatives or senators or presidents or even members of the Supreme Court, they're more concerned about their own power than they are about the people. That's why we have such partisan politics right now. So Akbar was kind of unique, and his goals were to do what was best for the people, and he actually did. Way to go, Akbar. So now let's talk about Mughal religion. And they are definitely similar to the Ottomans in this aspect, at least under Akbar, right? Akbar believed in religious tolerance. He knew that the Mughals were a Muslim minority ruling over a Hindu majority. He understood that right away. And if you were really strict or mean to the Hindus, they're going to rise up and rebel and everything's going to go to hell in a handbasket. So he believed in religious tolerance. And I don't think he just believed it to keep the empire together. I think he really dug different religions. He was always interested in them. And so he decides to give Hindus, Christians, Muslims, obviously, Sikhs, Jane's religious freedom. Practice what you want to practice. And he even takes it a step further when he creates the Ibadat Khana, which is like this theological meeting place where he would invite religious scholars from all over the world to discuss different types of religion. He was kind of trying to find those central core values or beliefs that were common to so many different religions. Not only does he have discussions about religions, but for the Hindus, when he ruled, they got more power, they could be more part of the government, they didn't have to pay the jizya, and so he was really, really good to his people when he ruled the Mughal Empire, both politically and religiously. Now, once again, I want you to find similarities between Mughal religious beliefs and Ottoman religious beliefs, and take a few minutes, and when you're done, come on back. So you're back. Hey, so what do we find in terms of similarities for religions? Hopefully you found that both empires were religiously tolerant to some degree, that they understood they were multi-ethnic empires and knew that being religiously tolerant would help control the people. Some differences that we might see is that the Mughals removed the jizya while the Ottomans didn't. And there could be a variety of reasons for that. Akbar really could be just like, I don't want to deal with this. Maybe the Mughal Empire needed less money than the Ottoman Empire. Who knows? But that is one key difference. Now, another key difference will come when we see Aurangzeb, who was a later emperor in the Mughal Empire. And when he became emperor, he was not tolerant of the Hindus at all. He reinstated the jizya. He had destroyed some Hindu temples, strictly enforced Sharia law, which is religious law for the Muslims, whether you were a Muslim or not. And so this definitely created a lot of animosity between the Muslims and the Hindus when Aurangzeb was in power. And you just don't see anybody like this in the Ottoman Empire. Most Ottoman sultans were like, dude, we're chill, we're awesome. Everybody's religiously tolerant. All right, let's move on to the economy. So the Mughals and the Ottomans both are heavily involved in trade, and India, being like the central location, like the midpoint for both the Silk Road and the Indian Ocean trade route, finds itself in a very enviable position. that they have a lot of goods coming in and they have a lot of goods coming out. Now, one of the most important goods coming out of the Mughal Empire is cotton. And that is still considered a luxury good. This is not a common good. And so they will trade cotton, the Mughals, throughout the Indian Ocean trade route. So we know we're probably going to find cotton in Africa, in the Middle East, in China, in Southeast Asia. Now, unlike the Ottomans, the Mughal government didn't directly control Mughal trade. That was all based on the merchants. The merchants could trade what they wanted, when they wanted, how much. That didn't matter. And the government didn't care. Trade what you want. But the government is going to do something similar to what the Ottomans do, and they are going to tax all imports and exports at a rate of 2.5%. Now, that is a pretty low tax, and so that's going to still get the government money, but it's a low enough tax to where people are still going to trade through India, because that's a pretty low import and export tax. Now, the majority of products coming out of the empire were cash crops. And cash crops are like luxury products that are raw materials, basically, that are specifically produced to sell to other nations, not for your own people to use. So some examples we might see in India are spices, dyes, cotton, right? And so then they're going to sell a ton of these cash crops and make a ton of money, which the Mughals do. The problem is most people in the Mughal Empire were farmers. Not only that, they didn't tend to own their own land. Most of these people were peasant farmers, and they worked either on some aristocrats' land or they worked on government-owned land. And they basically paid rent for being able to work on that land and, got a little plot of land for themselves for kind of whatever food. Not necessarily a bad idea. A lot of nations do this at this time. This is nothing new, nothing unique. But here's where we run into a problem, at least for the peasant population. When the majority of your land is being used to produce cash crops, the merchants are going to make a lot of money, the rich landowners are going to make a lot of money, and the government's going to make a lot of money because they're the ones who control a lot of the land. The peasants won't. The peasants are not going to see any profit off of these cash crops, right? But they do make enough money to be able to buy what they need in the nation, and they're allowed to live on the land that they are tilling, for lack of a better word, and they are given some small plots of land to grow their own food. But what happens when there's a drought? What happens when the peasants' land goes bad? What happens if the aristocrats' land goes bad and the aristocrat just gets up and moves, right? That is going to lead to periods of famine, of starvation. Because if the land goes bad, if there is a drought, while the rich people can afford food that's being imported from other countries, the poor people cannot. So you did see some pretty significant periods of starvation, at least for the peasant population in the Mughal Empire. And for those of you who were in class the last couple days, that is one of the major reasons that people actually rise up and rebel. All right, so here is what I want you to do now. When I say go, I want you to pause the video. I want you to go back to your learning objectives that you got with the Ottoman Empire, and I want to make sure that you can provide information from the Mughal Empire that can answer all three of those learning objectives. Also, this would be an opportunity, if I went too fast, for you to go back, rewind the video, get any notes that you haven't been able to get yet, and make sure that your notes are complete. So take a few minutes to do this, and when you're done, come back to the video. So hopefully you have been able to get the notes you needed and be able to answer all three learning objectives, and also find similarities and differences between the Ottoman and the Mughal Empire. So what we're going to do now is create a Venn diagram on your notes. And so one circle obviously is going to represent the Ottoman Empire, and one circle is going to represent the Mughal Empire. And then you have a little line, right? Well, you can't see, but you have a line connecting the two circles. And within that small area, that's where you put the similarities, and the differences are on the outside. I'm pretty sure you guys have done a Venn diagram before, but again, similar differences on the outside, similarities on the inside. Try to find at least 3 to 4 differences, maybe couple similarities, and make sure that this is on your notes because I will be checking your notes for this Venn diagram when you come back to class. Once you are done with the Venn diagram, you are done with the video today. I want to thank you for joining me. Until next time, see you later.